Hi, my name is Beth. I'm a highly specialist paediatric speech and language therapist, and I'm also a mum. I'm here to talk to you about dummies. Now, dummies is a really hot topic for us speech therapists and also for us parents, to be honest with you. They're a bit naughty. They can affect a few different aspects of children's speech and language development, so I want to talk to you about it. First things first, if a child has a dummy in their mouth and they're not really able to talk to you very clearly, often children will point or they'll grunt or they'll kind of just move their whole body instead of getting their message across using their mouth because they've got a dummy in their mouth. Dummies can also affect the teeth positioning of children. If you Google images of dummy teeth and dummy mouth, then you'll see that there's quite an open bite for some children, which can really cause problems a little bit later on down the line. Just talk to your dentist about dummies. Dummies can impact on speech sound development, on dummies and thumb sucking. If you put your thumb in your mouth and you try and say these following sentences, listen to the difference in it. So make sure you pause. So you can say this sentence: Thomas took my teddy. Put your thumb in your mouth and say that sentence. Sounded a bit funny, didn't it? Try this one. Dan doesn't do dancing. Pop your thumb in your mouth and say that sentence. Dan doesn't do dancing. Again, it's not so clear, is it? What about this one? Simon, stop being silly. No, some slushy sounds probably came out there when you tried that sentence there. That's because the ridge just behind the teeth is where we make loads of different sounds. T, d, n, l, s, z, sh, ch, j. All of those sounds can be made just on that ridge up behind the teeth. It's called an alveolar ridge. But if there's an obstruction like a thumb or a dummy, then those sounds aren't going to be able to be clearly made. And did you hear any different sounds that were being produced? Maybe you produced a k sound or more of a slushy sound instead of some of those target t, d, and s sounds. This is what's happening with children if they're talking with a dummy in their mouth. So it's really important, if your child is talking to you, then don't let them have anything else in their mouth that can cause their speech to come out a little bit unclear, because the more they're talking with a dummy in their mouth, the more their speech is going to be unclear, and then habits are going to be built up with regards to sound substitutions and swapping sounds. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't mean with not having a dummy for my children. Both of my children, I've got two daughters, both of my kids had dummies when they were little because it helped them sleep. And oh my goodness, I lived for the evenings often when my children were little, just so they would take their dummy and go to sleep. I'm not against dummies at all. However, if your child is over the age of 18 months, they really don't need to have a dummy. If your child is awake, they don't need to have a dummy. If they're feeling a little bit poorly, I might let you off, only if they're really, really tiny. You can't pacify them with just a cuddle or a toy or a cuddly blanket instead. So I do have some top tips for you. These are top tips that I've tried as a mum, top tips that I've given out as a speech and language therapist, and top tips that I've gained from other mums and other speech therapists and other parents too. It's really tricky for some children just to have a dummy taken away completely. And nobody wants that, especially if you're just relying on the children to go to sleep. So gradually decrease the use. So start to keep it just for nap time and bedtime. Keep it only in the bedroom and don't let it come out. If it's on the sofa, then it's in a naughty place. It needs to be just that, just in the bed and just at nap time and just at bedtime. One of my friends told me to poke a hole in the dummy so it loses its suction, and that worked for one of my kids. And they just really weren't interested in it anymore. So that was a really good one. So poke a hole in the dummy or just snip the end off, just so it doesn't really feel the same in the mouth. It doesn't give that same kind of sensory feedback for your little one. A little bit mean, but the idea is that we don't want them to have a dummy anymore, because we don't want them to have bad teeth, we don't want them to have delayed speech development, and we don't want them to have any speech sound difficulties. You can always put the dummy in a box, swap it with Santa, send it to the Easter Bunny, give it to the Tooth Fairy in advance. So you can even send it to your local speech therapy service. We're always happy to receive manky dummies in the post, because it means that those children aren't talking with those dummies in their mouth. So that's fine for us. That's work we don't have to do a little bit later on if they have any speech sound difficulties. You can always accidentally drop a dummy in a puddle. That also happened to one of my kids. Poor thing. And then it was just too yucky and too manky for her to put in her mouth anymore. But she didn't really need it anyway. And she wasn't asleep, so she shouldn't have had it with her anyway. You can always use a sticker chart, give rewards, extra cuddles, things like that to motivate your child to not have their dummy anymore. If you are really stuck, then do seek some advice. Have a chat with your child's teacher or their preschool or their key workers or their childminder, whoever is helping with any of your childcare. Have a chat with other mums as well. Have a chat with your local speech therapist, who's always happy to give a bit of advice over the phone, and they might even have a leaflet. You can have a look at my website, speechandlanguagegarden.com. for my blog post on ditching the dummy, which also has some of these my top tips and my top ideas to help with you for your little one. If you're also concerned about your child's speech sound development or their development at all, you can grab some of the freebies on that website there too. So I hope this video has given you a little bit of advice on how to ditch that dummy. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.